Please join us to sing our gathering hymn, We Give Thanks. Good morning, and welcome everyone to all of you joining us online for worship at First Unitarian Church in Portland, Oregon. Our mission is to nurture the individual spirit and together work toward the beloved community. In response to the surge in the Omicron COVID variant, starting today, we are returning to virtual-only worship. You'll notice we draw from previous services for our music selections today. Other in-person gatherings are also suspended until the current surge of infections subsides. Our public health team was unanimous and clear that gatherings provide an opportunity for spread of this highly transmissible variant, even with vaccinations, mask wearing, and distancing. It is our hope that this extensive surge of infections will be short-lived. We will return to in-person gatherings as soon as the infection and hospitalization rates allow. We are grateful for your continued patience as we adapt, along with you, to the changing circumstances. This morning, I have a few announcements to share. Today at 1:30 p.m., the Advancing Racial Justice Action Group will have a screening and discussion of Traces of the Trade, a story from the Deep North. The film centers on the family of a white minister in New England as it tries to reconcile its wealth and social capital with its heritage as the direct descendants of the largest slave trading family in the United States. Following the film, there will be a facilitated discussion with optional breakout room for Black, Indigenous, and persons of color. You can register for the Zoom event by looking for the QR code at the end of the service or through the announcements in our e-news. And please mark your calendars for 2 upcoming events this month. On Sunday, January 23rd at 1:30 p.m., Oregon UU Voices for Justice and the Interfaith Alliance on Poverty will co-host an interfaith legislative forum on Zoom. This will be an opportunity to learn about the legislative priorities from Oregon representatives and senators for the upcoming short legislative session. Topics include housing, healthcare, climate, gun violence, and transforming justice. Please look in the e-news for registration information. And something else to get on your calendar is for Saturday, January 29th. It's our virtual seminary for a day. This year's presenter will be Reverend Abhi Janamanchi, who serves as the senior minister of the Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church in Bethesda, Maryland. He describes himself as a Hindu Unitarian Universalist and says that his Unitarian Universalism makes him a better Hindu. Reverend Janamanchi will talk about doing the inner work of racial justice. You can register for seminary for a day with the link in the e-news. And finally, you are invited to attend our weekly virtual social hour after the service. You'll see a web address and QR code on your screen at the end of the service that will take you directly to that room. You can also see our weekly e-news or go to the church website for these and other church announcements. Once again, welcome, everyone. Reverend Tom will light our chalice here in the sanctuary. If you have a candle or chalice at home, I invite you to light it now as well. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
My faith, my hope, my strength, my light. Come my way, my truth, my life, such a way as Jesus spread, such
Words of Wendell Berry. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And when we no longer know which way to go, we have begun our real journey. Friends, we are in times when where we are going may not feel very clear. We may not know what the future holds. In our coming together here in this virtual space, may we find hope and sustenance for the journey. Come now and let us worship here together. And I invite you to join me in singing, "When I Am Frightened."
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? feelings with me. If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me, comfort me tenderly? Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
Please join now in our responsive reading. It's by James Baldwin. For nothing is fixed, forever, forever, forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. Please join now as we sing our doxology, Spirit of Life.
In our service, we share our offering with an organization whose mission aligns with our own. For the month of January, we temporarily pivot from our focus on climate to address the urgency of reproductive justice. It is likely that the constitutional right to abortion will be overturned by the Supreme Court later in 2022. More than half of the United States are poised to ban or severely restrict safe abortion access if and when that happens. In January, we share our plate with the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. RCRC is a broad-based national interfaith movement that brings the moral force of religion to protect and advance reproductive health, choice, rights, and justice through education, prophetic witness, pastoral presence, and advocacy. RCRC values and promotes the human rights of all people to exercise their conscience, to make their own reproductive health decisions. RCRC challenges systems of oppression and seeks to remove barriers to accessing comprehensive reproductive health care with respect and dignity. To share your offering, you may click on the Donate Now button on Boxcast or use the QR code that will soon appear on the screen. Thank you for your generosity that sustains the ministry of this congregation and our partners in the larger community. This is the time each week where we share the joys and concerns of our community life together. You can send in your prayer requests to be held by our ministers and lay ministers to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. If you have a joy or concern to be shared with the congregation, you can send it to parishconcerns@firstunitarianportland.org. This morning, we have no parish concerns to share. Will you enter into a spirit of meditation and prayer with me? Let's begin by settling into our bodies and into this moment. Please join me in taking a full and conscious breath. Allow your hands and feet to soften, to release. Your eyes can close or rest with a soft gaze. Your brow can let go. Feel the movement of breath in your body and let that awareness melt any tension you may feel. At this time, there is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to do. Spirit of life and love, accompany us as we quiet ourselves, as we settle into the refuge of the present moment. In our quiet, help us remember that we are whole, that we are loved, that we belong just as we are. We are grateful for our wholeness and for our connection to this community and to Spirit. May the sense of stillness, of ease in this moment be a resource for us that we can return to again and again. From the well of stillness and presence, may we find strength to go on. May we listen with humility. May we speak with compassion. May we love with confidence. And may we radiate peace. Amen. Let's sit together for a few more moments of stillness. Please join as we sing together, "Winds Be Still."
Winds be
reading today is called New Day's Lyric by Amanda Gorman. May this be the day we come together. Mourning, we come to mend. Withered, we come to weather. Torn, we come to tend. Battered, we come to better. Tethered by this year of yearning, we are learning that though we weren't ready for this, we have been readied by it. We steadily vow that no matter how we are weighed down, we must always pave a way forward. This hope is our door, our portal. Even if we never get back to normal, someday we can venture beyond it, to leave the known and take the first steps. So let us not return to what was normal, but reach toward what is next. What was cursed, we will cure. What was plagued, we will prove pure. Where we tend to argue, we will try to agree. Those fortunes we forswore, now the future we foresee. Where we weren't aware, we're now awake. Those moments we missed are now these moments we make, the moments we meet, and our hearts, once altogether beaten, now altogether beat. Come, look up with kindness yet, for even solace can be sourced from sorrow. We remember not just for the sake of yesterday, but to take on tomorrow. We heed this old spirit in a new day's lyric. In our hearts we hear it. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne. Be bold, sang time this year. Be bold, sang time. For when you honor yesterday, tomorrow ye will find. Know that we've fought, need not be forgot, nor for none. It defines us, binds us as one. Come over, join this day just begun, for wherever we come together, we will forever overcome.
overheard a conversation among a small group of people this week. "Happy New Year," says one person. "At least we know 2022 will be better than the last two." A noticeable and sustained pause descends on the group. The person speaking, picking up on this, haltingly says, "Well, at least let's hope." Well, at least let's hope. That was as good a summary as I have experienced when it comes to describing this new year 2022 thus far. Other conversations from this week come to mind, like when we had a sobering meeting with the church's public health team and heard their advice, not unexpected, to go back to virtual-only worship for a time. No choir rehearsals for a time, no in-person religious education for a time. The latest chapter in this COVID saga is now with us. Friends, let me tell you that I hoped when we resumed in-person attendance last November that these virtual-only services would be in our rear view mirror here at the church. I thought that the worst of the pandemic was behind us. And indeed, it may be, depending on how you look at the statistics. And still, the first days of this new year have felt like a big setback. I hadn't appreciated until folks were back here in person just how much energy it takes to do church without at least some of you present. It takes more imagination to think of all of you being out there. Seeing your faces in person just makes church a whole lot easier. It makes it church. So please know that you are missed this morning. This COVID time has been a long journey. Remember back at the beginning when it started? Now, almost 2 years ago? I recall our conversations on staff in those early days. How long would the shutdown be? 2 weeks? Maybe 3 weeks, certainly not more than a month, and certainly we'll be back by Easter. At the time, Easter was a little over a month away. Easter became Memorial Day, and then it started to become more clear. No, this pandemic was going to be a lot longer. Maybe the whole next church year longer. I recall how it felt as that reality set in. That whole year came. We made it through that first set of winter holidays. Not easy, but for 1 year we did it. That was a relief. With the new year came vaccinations. Now we are on the home stretch, I remember thinking, as the weeks went by and more people became eligible for their shots. There was light at the end of the proverbial tunnel. By that summer, last summer, it felt like things were indeed opening back up. We had our service in Pioneer Courthouse Square. It was great. All of us gathered together in person, even in the rain, to have us there. That being together would help us get to the fall when we'd be back in business and we would be coming back and be just like we were before. Only it didn't quite go as planned. A new variant emerged. Plans for in-person were put on hold. It was November when that finally did happen, and it proved to be a slower coming back than I think we had expected. Many of us, after months of not being in crowds, well, we were understandably pretty cautious. But I recall still feeling hopeful. With time, things would continue to come back. And indeed, with time, they have. And then came this most recent variant. I wanted to recount our pandemic journey to remind us of just how long all of this has been, that the 2-year mark is just a couple months away. Honestly, I'm still trying to get my head around that one. Part of it is to remember just how long 2 years out of our lives can be. Think about how much a child grows and changes in the course of that time. Of course, I don't know about you, but the very sense of time has gotten distorted for me. More than once, I found myself trying to figure out if something happened pre-COVID or not, and it quickly gets very, very blurry. Yes, it feels as if our sense of time has changed, and maybe it's just as important to note how our lives have changed in so many, many ways. Now, I don't want to lose sight of the positives this morning. I don't want to lose sight of the vaccines that most of us have been privileged to receive, and more recently, those booster shots. I don't want to lose sight of how this time has made space for ways that our lives maybe are better, maybe a little less complicated. I don't want to lose sight of the things we realize we really didn't need so much of. And I hope we carry some of those learnings forward with us. And I don't want to lose sight of how many of us can count ourselves among the privileged in ways that we haven't counted ourselves in the past. How things that we may have taken for granted, we no longer take for granted. I don't want to lose sight of the privilege many of us have had to work from home or to mostly stay at home. I don't want to forget the debt of gratitude owed to those who haven't had those same privileges that I have enjoyed. But with all of that said, I also want to make space to remind ourselves, too, of all the losses in this time. Deaths and illness in our circles, sometimes in our close circles. Time we haven't had with loved ones. Time we haven't been able to do the things we may have dreamed about doing. And some less tangible things as well, like our very sense of safety and moving in the world. Just when will it be safe to come out, and when will it not be safe to come out? In the last month or so with this latest variant, I've sensed a kind of shared awareness of all the losses, a kind of collective shared experience of how life has changed and how it may well be changed for the long term, how certain things won't come back. I think that too is important to recognize. Words again of poet Amanda Gorman. Mourning we come to mend, withered we come to weather, torn we come to tend, battered we come to better. Over the holiday break, on one of these gray days we've had lately, I found myself looking at the bookshelf in my office at home. And I found myself drawn to one book that included the phrase, dark night of the soul. Now that phrase, dark night of the soul, comes from the Spanish mystic and poet John of the Cross, who lived in the 16th century. John was a member of the Carmelite Christian religious order. John advocated for reforms within that order, and so many members were against it that he was imprisoned for several months. During that time, he wrote a series of poems, and one of them was entitled Dark Night of the Soul. He wrote about the night of the senses and the night of the spirit. Through time, that phrase has come to describe all kinds of ways humans have struggled. It could be in the midst of loss or illness. It could be in the midst of life change. It could come from some global disruption that can affect all of us. It could be called depression. It could generally be a time when we have felt some deep, deep sense of loss, some deep, deep loss of our grounding. The dark night may be psychological. The dark night may be deeply spiritual, too. Many of us, I expect, have known those nights, whatever the particulars may be for each of us. They are times when we felt lost, times when we have been pulled inward, times when we didn't know how it is we would find our way and how we have made our way through or haven't made our way through. But all of those things have shaped us, and we bring all of those learnings, all of those life experiences into the present moment with us. We are learning that though we weren't ready for this, we have been readied by it. We steadily vow that no matter how we are weighed down, we must always pave a way forward. The writer Wayne Dosick is a rabbi who tells the story of losing his home in a fire. He and his wife were away, and they returned to a house that has been completely destroyed in a wildfire. They try to take in the magnitude of their loss. Dosick writes about how going through the stages of anger and grief, he talks about wondering where exactly their possessions went. They have a hard time imagining how most of them somehow have gone up into thin air, consumed in the heat of that fire. At first, they sift through the rubble, and all they see is ash. But as they come to look more closely, they come to see what remains of some of the objects that were indeed in that fire. They come to see how this thing is now fused with this other thing. They come to see how at least some of what they had, some of what they knew is still there, but just in another form. They come to see how some of the things that they knew are beautiful now in some wholly different way. Dosick writes that for him, everything that we know best, everything that we know is made up of what he calls God energy, that there is something more than the object itself when we give it power and meaning, and that could be said of relationships in our lives too. That some of our own energy is invested in the thing and in those relationships, and when it's gone, there's a part of us that is gone as well, but how we can also find meaning even when it would seem that something has been lost, when in fact it's simply changed form. And what about this time that we have been in? Each chapter, each surge, each loss, each learning? Our sense of ourselves and the ways we have changed or not. What is it that has been lost? What of life do we now experience in some new form, in some new shape? And how are we in relationship with all of that, with this larger world? Words again of the poet. We are learning that though we weren't ready for this, we have been readied by it. We steadily vow that no matter how we are weighed down, we must always pave a way forward. How is it that we are learning to pave our way forward? I know in talking with many of you that it has not been an easy path. This has not been an easy time. And I expect we have perhaps learned some things about ourselves and how it is we do manage, or how we don't. How we have learned about strengths that maybe we didn't know, or maybe we've forgotten that we had. How maybe we've come to know once again how we've been so blessed in our lives, or maybe to honor too just how much we have struggled. This hope is our door, our portal. Even if we never get back to normal, someday we can venture beyond it to leave the known and take the first steps. So let us return to what was normal, but reach toward what is next. Those moments we missed, and now these moments we make, the moments we meet, our hearts once altogether beaten, now all together beat. One of the paradoxes of this time of isolation has been, I think, a newfound realization of just how interconnected our lives truly are. And hopefully, as we recognize our own vulnerability, we can also see how others share that vulnerability with us, how we are all vulnerable together. There is much in this time that would have us feeling isolated and alone. There is much that would have us feeling pretty darn weary right now. There is much that would want us to see the world through a lens of scarcity and of fear. Our job, I think, is to make space to see ourselves in relation to the whole and to recognize how tied together our lives and the lives of others really are. Our task is to first recognize that and then move out of that place, but to also know that the path may not be very easy. This likely won't be the last variant. Just what all of this looks like is not at all easy to predict. The truth is that getting to where we want and need to be will take time. We need to know that place will look different. And what we need to know and what we need to remember through it all is that we need to stay in right relationship with others. Our spiritual theme this month is accountability. Accountability. It is perhaps in times like this when we recognize more deeply the layers of accountability in our lives, to ourselves, to those closest to us, to our communities, and to something larger. What is being asked of us, and how is it that we are to live? And does that something larger include our accountability to others who may have not been on our list before? Might a lesson from this time be a recognition of just how interdependent we are? Might a lesson from this time might be to recognize our ever-growing circle of care and of concern. What was cursed, we will cure. What was plagued, we will prove pure. Where we tend to argue, we will try to agree. Those fortunes we forswore, now the future we foresee. Where we weren't aware, we're now awake. How our hearts all together do beat. We can never know what tomorrow will bring. We certainly can't know the next stage, the next surge in this pandemic and what that will bring. But on this day, even now amid these gray days of winter, may we find hope and promise in the turning of a new year. May we find hope and promise in at least the possibility of some larger turning. May this time of disruption be a time when we notice things that perhaps we didn't notice before. In that noticing, in that living, may we find our way. In closing, words from the poet. Come, look up with kindness yet, for even solace can be sourced from sorrow. We remember not just for the sake of yesterday, but to take on tomorrow. Come over, join this day just begun, for whenever we come together, we will forever overcome. May this be our hope, this day and in this year to come. Amen. Will you pray with me now? Great Spirit of life and of love, remind us of all the blessings we know. Remind us of who we are, of all the places and people who are part of us, the communities who have helped us along the way. And remind us, Spirit, amid surges and outbreaks, amid fears and amid weariness, of how we do not make this journey alone. Hold us, Spirit. Guide us. Bless us. Amen. Please join now as we sing together, I Know I Can. Remember, good people, that through these complicated and difficult and amazing times, that you do not journey alone. Live with purpose. Live in love. This is the day we've been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Amen.